You just tuned in with Defiance the Dawn, live on the Choppin block. Prepare to level the game with the knowledge of street science. Turn your speakers up and let's get into it.
Oh, that hurts so good, man. That's the shit you remember when you forget everything else.
What's going on? I'm glad that y'all were able to tune in. This is the Choppin block, episode 4. I was having some technical difficulties earlier. That's why I couldn't get the show out when I wanted to. You know, with the computers and when you're trying to do different things and all of a sudden everything's going right every episode, there's no problem. And then I'm getting ready to run this one and everything that could go wrong starts going wrong. You know, stuff needs to start updating and then, you know, things just all of a sudden don't function or don't communicate with each other. And I'm like, what the hell's going on? Fuck, man. Every time I run the show, it's fine. And now all of a sudden you got a damn problem and nothing's been changed. So y'all know how it goes. You know, sometimes these things just tend to happen. So what's going on? How's everybody doing? You know, we're in the middle of 2019 January right now, and it's feeling real good that we really hitting this thing off strong. A lot of things going on, but we ain't going to let that slow the hustle. So what are we going to talk about today? I think I was looking up some things, and what I want to let y'all know about is this shit is crazy right now that they're trying to build out this whole city out in Africa right now. They're building a huge empire right now that I don't know if y'all caught up with it or been able to see, but guess what it is? They out there really trying to build the real life Wakanda. That's what they're going to do. I was actually looking at it. They're going ahead and putting it together between actually Zambia and Zimbabwe. They're both going to give up land towards creating a real life Wakanda city. And I think Zimbabwe has given about close to 5,000 acres, and Zambia has given a little over 300 to go ahead and make this happen. And the whole thing is it's going to be funded by the AU. And now the AU out there, that's the African Union. They're going to go ahead and fund this project and build it out so that they have a real life working, functioning Wakanda model. And that whole thing that they're going to do, they're going to call it Wakanda 1. Now, the reason why they're calling it Wakanda 1 is because they're thinking of making 5 different Wakanda locations. This is just the first project. And this project is supposed to create a sense of, I guess, pride or a sense of feeling to come back into the area for everyone that's a part of the African diaspora. So they want to go ahead and bring jobs and bring economy and bring people back into the area by building the first Wakanda. You know, I have a very mixed feelings about that. I think it's dope that they're really trying to build something so technologically advanced, but dang, I mean, with Zimbabwe is going through an economic crisis right now. I think Zimbabwe, their president that just came in was Emerson Nagagwa, and he actually went ahead and raised the taxes that are on Zimbabwe's gasoline, on their oil pricing and everything. So they've hit economic low where property tax has raised, where oil and gas has raised. So people have been, since the beginning of 2018, struggling financially. The entire country as a whole been hit hard. And then they're going to give up almost 5,000 acres of land towards a fictional city that's out of a Marvel comic that was built out of here in the US. And I don't even know with the copyright laws and everything like that, backed by, the name being owned by Marvel Studios. So there's that whole crazy thing. And then you have Zambia. Zambia is larger by landmass than Zimbabwe, but Zambia has given up very little, maybe 5 to 10% of what Zimbabwe has contributed. And then Zambia, they are actually probably doing better economically than Zimbabwe is. Zambia just actually has the China's coming in, and they're doing a mass economic contribution to Zambia, obviously for them to be able to build there. And that's what's kind of crazy right now with um, you having China so involved with a lot of these things that are taking place in Africa right now. And even with, them giving that large contribution. So now you have, okay, this Wakanda, they're trying to build it out. And then they say that the AU, African Union, is supposed to contribute. Zambia is supposed to contribute. Zimbabwe is supposed to contribute. And so all these contributions of resources, lands, and stuff like that. And China is still going to have their hands in it because China being doing a large economic contribution to Zambia, and then the African Union. Do you know that China is the one that actually contributed and built the African Union? So it's China's dollars that actually was put up to go ahead and create the African Union as where it stands today. And even thinking back at China, they're so cold with the game. They're so cold with it because now we have, you know, um, the Chinese, they said, hey, we're doing so much work here in Africa. We're contributing so much, and we're building out so many different industries. Why don't we build you this union? And we'll go ahead and make sure that we can help African states and African countries come closer together in being able to unionize. But they don't do anything without expecting something back. And I think it was in 2017 that they found out the whole time during the African Union. It might have been a little further back than that, but it might have been 2016. But the whole time during the African Union, while they were having meetings and conferences by the top presidents and the top ambassadors from different African countries, all the technology within the African Union, the actual facility was being tapped, was actually tapped by China, and all the information that was proprietary, all the conversations, everything that was going on within the union was being sent back to Beijing. So they were spying on the very people that they created this union for the whole time, because it was Chinese dollars that were put up to create this. And then Chinese are going to go ahead and overlook this and oversee everything that's going on. So now they're doing this Wakanda project, and then they're doing a large contribution of their dollars towards it. So also looking at that and that type of influence, and where these countries are actually economically by themselves in a deficit. Is this something that's really need to build a fictitious city that's going to really just bring symbolism and a lot of emotions and feelings, but truths and facts and priorities and stuff that really needs to happen? Will that help it happen at all? And it's it's really interesting when we go ahead and we look at even further some of the stuff that is taking place with that, where China's building out so many industries in Africa, like I said, and now we have them being able to mine some of the resources throughout the continent of Africa that are some of the most thorough and and well preserved resources on the planet. And when we actually look at that compared to, you know, America, where the US has definitely had its hands in the second colonization of the entire continent, and us privatizing different states and countries to be able to extract the resources that we need, to be able to power the stuff that we want, whether it's our cell phones, our tablets, us to be able to have all these different things. I think it's the mineral that's known as coltan is actually mined out of, I want to say, it's not it's not Ghana, but it's off of the Ivory Coast, where they mine for a lot of that coltan that is used in a lot of our electronics for them to be able to work. So we have big infrastructure there, but we usually went in with the thoughts to be able to militarize a lot of the territories within the continent, where now China's coming in with a completely different stance. They have a completely different way of being able to, I guess, contribute and also build relationships out there, where now, okay, China, they're coming in and they're more or less looking at it from an economical standpoint, versus the US that would have been looking at it from a militarized standpoint, where US comes in and mostly we start bringing in troops, we start going ahead and setting up bases, we set up, you know, people to work in espionage, to infiltrate and coerce, governments and officials to be able to work alongside with us in order for us to be able to have resources from that country in exchange. That's what privatization is. And then the Chinese, they actually come in with a completely different method. Theirs is very economical. So they look at the landmass, they look at the people, they look at the country, they see what is needed, they contribute corporations, industries, they build businesses, and they actually help fund and they bring jobs to the economy so that people can actually work and make an income. And for them to bring a lot of these things to fund a lot of other businesses, they ask for resources in exchange, which it's still the same means to an end, but they just go about it a different way. So it becomes a very soft shoeing the way that Chinese end up doing it. So they're able to take in the information, or not even the information, but the contribution a lot different. So it's very interesting, where now I went into that to really look at some of the other things that I'm noticing. And I was watching television actually the other day, and um I saw a commercial where Common was on there, the rapper, and Common was saying something about artificial intelligence, and really bringing that to the forefront. And I'm looking at how the change in the lingo and the dynamic on how we're speaking about things are starting to migrate. They're starting to evolve. So where something might have just been basically apps that speak to you, or voice apps, or even how we have Siri, or Google has its voice product, and Amazon and Apple, they all have something with a voice, and no one really put the name AI to it. There wasn't artificial intelligence. It was just an extra app or an extra feature. Now, we're going ahead and plugging that into, you know, the social settings of what is kind of in our everyday lingo, what is now going to become the new norm. And that was very interesting to me as I looked at that, because I know that China right now, they are one of the I guess highest in being involved in this artificial intelligent race, this movement. And we're looking at how it's going to be kind of presented to us here in the West, where we're going to see a lot more of that word being used, a lot more of it becoming the norm. 5 years ago, if I was talking about artificial intelligence, you would still think I'm talking about Hollywood, the movies, iRobot, all these things that are unreal. Now they're making vehicles that can speak to each other, vehicles that have encoded algorithms that now they can speak and they understand each other, and they're known as AIs within the actual vehicles too. So that's what's interesting. So there's this new race that's going on where now you have China and you have the US. And the US is going into actually its second Cold War. The Cold War where we had Russia and we had the US. And what was that? That was a space race to be able to launch the first man in the moon, the first man out of space. That was to build up NASA. That was to build up space technology. Now we have a race for artificial intelligence, and we need to be able to have an opponent. And that opponent now is China, for us to go and build into this next level of technology. And there's so many things that come into play with, the blockchain technology, cryptocurrency, all these different things on why this is playing out the way that it is with this with this whole race that they're doing. Y'all know it's so deep that they say come 2020 that China is working on launching an artificial moon. They are actually working on trying to launch an artificial moon into space. It's called illumination satellites, and they're actually trying to launch 4 of them. So this is real on the sense of what is going on behind the scenes on so many levels, and we have to understand what's going on around us, why things are happening globally, and how do they start to trickle down and affect us economically, government shutdowns, and people that don't have any other sources of income. How are they able to stay viable during a time where there's so many things that might seem chaotic and you have no idea why they're happening? You can't even forecast what will come next because you're not prepared, because you're not in a level of knowing. And that also plays a part on what we involve ourselves in on a regular basis. Where do we spend most of our time? You are what you spend most of your time doing. And that's what you will be represented as. That's what will reflect who you are. What are your surroundings? What do you spend most of your time invested in? When we talk about things that are being created to kind of duplicate or supplement the human being that are artificial. And there's nothing that can supplement that, because to come down to the truth of the matter, I'm a big believer in a lot of the Eastern philosophies. A lot of the things that have been spoken for eons, millenniums, centuries on down. And we are human beings, but we are spiritual beings having a human experience. We are a form of technology at the highest degree. There's nothing that can duplicate that. So having something artificially created cannot go ahead and duplicate sentient beings. But you have to be in a realm of that type of understanding, a realm of surrounding yourself by things that are authentic, things that are real, things that are organic, things that aren't artificial. And a lot of the things that we end up surrounding ourselves by can be artificial. From what we see, what we believe, the propaganda we swallow, the people we come in contact with. Some people that we even surround ourselves with on a regular basis can be very artificial. See, with all this being said, yes, we are spiritual beings having a human experience. But that human side of us, that's the creature of habit. That's the animal in us. That's the animalistic part of man. That's the one that is tempted by his desires of the needs of material and the needs of the ego, and that to be fed, and the desire to belong, and all these things that need to make us feel important, make us feel valued. Those are all the temptations that are mixed within, the mind of man that we have to try to overcome. And you have each individual that has their own demons that they have to try to work through, and they could be surrounding you on a regular basis. And you have to be able to understand that. We end up falling into these comfortable dispositions, and it's almost like pack animals, where you have to learn how to be teachable, and you have to learn how to go ahead and obtain and gain knowledge, because that's not something that's always automatic and innate to some people. Some people are driven more by emotions, more by instinct. That's it. So we have to be able to think about, how do we separate ourselves from those that oppose, or and not oppose, but those that place their limitations upon us. You will have people that will come into your life that they live with only thinking about a glass ceiling. They can't move past that. They don't have the same vision as you might. There are people that are here that solely are here as an obstacle. They're just a cog in the wheel. And what I mean by that, everyone has a purpose, but some people's purposes are an obstacle in your course. And you have to be able to see that. That doesn't make them insignificant at all. If anything, that makes them extremely important. Because they are the ones that help you to build character. Because these are the people that are able to test you. To be a person that has passion, belief, a desire, a will to be something, to live fearless, and have a discipline about that, that's very rare. There are all kinds of people that aren't able to exhibit that same type of force. So their automatic and innate feeling is to either push that away or push it down. Nothing comes from just wanting. Nothing comes from just wishing. Things come from having drive, consistency, and taking action in your life. Learning how to become better, evolving yourself, becoming more, that starts to shed a lot of the old people. What you do, you end up shedding an old reality. You ever see when you start to exhibit interest in different things, you start going to new places, you start eating different foods, you start exploring outside of your comfort zone, you end up seeing that some of the people that you were used to being around, they end up being less and less in your circle. You see them less frequent as you would at one time when you were doing the things that you had similar interests. As you start to change and change in your habits, evolve in your character, you start to shed the old paradigm that you once lived in, and things start to become different. And there's nothing wrong with that, and there's nothing wrong with still staying in contact with people you know, but you have to evolve in order to become more. You have to expand. The mind works off of an expansion. The same way that the body gets fed, the mind needs to be fed. The brain needs to be fed. It's an instrument. So when you feed it, what are you feeding it? You can't only feed it based on the same conditions, the same food, the same things that it always sees. It needs new experiences in order to grow. It needs to be able to understand. It needs to comprehend. And when you start doing these things, you actually start building a muscle that strengthens and it opens up to take in more information. And it starts making you more expansive and more evolved as a person because your understanding starts to grow. And that's what starts to keep you youthful, is because the more that you understand, the more that your mind starts to grow and the more that your mind stays sharp. When you have a glass ceiling and you're living in an artificial world, these things don't become real to you. You create a box that you choose to live in because it becomes comfortable and you don't want to break out of that because you have a security that you want to stick with. That security makes you feel safe. It makes you feel that life's okay. I don't have to step out of this. This is what I'm comfortable with. I don't want to know anymore. But that way to live also limits the experiences, and it limits the knowledge, and it limits how much you actually can grow. And that's what you want to be able to do. You want to be able to grow as you start evolving. And that's very important, because you have so many people that are brainwashed for failure because they're scared of success. They live in a level of blind compliance and complacency. And that's kind of where a lot of us happen to be. There's a way that you're told to live in this world that most unwealthy or economically disenfranchised people end up following, because that's how we were taught to live in order to keep us in those conditions. The people that are on top and the people that are wealthy and living well, they don't follow the same rules that we follow. You hear about all types of protections and trust, and you hear about them having corporations and tax breaks, and them having foundations and trust funds and all these things that aren't a normal living way for us. They know how to utilize their credit as an asset, where we use it and it becomes a debt slaves, and people become conditioned to living in that glass ceiling of that's the limit of where they can go. And the easiest way for them to keep that going is to keep everyone to hold each other to that level. But you don't have to. It's all a choice. We are very resilient people. We're strong people. We are people that are advanced technology, biologically carbon beings. We are conducive to the same adaptive elements of this planet. We are adaptive to things that even come towards us, cause us illness. I mean, they manufacture things to try to harm us, whether it's cancers or HIVs. And now you see people can live with it longer than they ever have. And we're building up tolerances because our body is able to go ahead and adapt to the conditions of even what they use to try to wipe us out. And that's mostly even black people, with the things that they manufacture to wipe us out. But at the end of the day, showing that resilience, if you don't have that type of core understanding, that core value, then you're never going to go ahead and step out of the artificial world. You have to know the value and the worth of what you are as a human being to be able to get the most out of what you deserve. You have to be careful of who you're around, because they're only going to limit you. Most people do not want to see you come up in no way, shape, form, or manner off of their own dime. They will never go ahead and pay $1 to see you get better. You say, well, why don't you support my business, homie? I'm trying to do this. You see me out here hustling. You see me out here grinding. You see that I'm trying to feed my kids. You see that I got a legitimate business popping. Why don't you ever support your man? Why don't you ever support your homegirl? Because ain't nobody really going to go ahead and invest and put nothing in your pocket when they came up with you from the same community, because that's not what it's about. They're not about trying to see you rise. The goal and the condition and the indoctrination that they've been built with is to keep you conditioned, conformed, complacent in the same living conditions as they are in. That's how deep the game has been. That's how they have been taught. So understand that. Understand these things. Well, I know I went into a lot of things, and I'm glad that I did, because y'all need to be able to go ahead and get in. We all need to wake up a little bit, because shit is getting real. In 2019, it's going to pop off. They're doing a lot right now, and we need to keep our eyes open, all of them, especially the third one. So go ahead and check me out over at imperialmediadesign.com if you need any type of digital media marketing services. And also look out for the magazine coming. We are going ahead and dropping the publication again. I ain't doing the IHE magazine, but we're doing Go Concentrate. Concentrate magazine, where it's going to still spotlight some things with artists, but we're going to talk more on the business aspect. We're going to focus on things that are socially economic. We're going to really put an emphasis on solution based products, solution based thinking, and ways that we can actually help rather than only think about maybe some of the glamour and glitz and all the wonderful things. We definitely want people to come up and get some knowledge out of it. So keep an eye out for that. It's going to be real dope, and I'm glad that y'all were able to tune in. Make sure you're over here next time, next Thursday, and we'll get it popping again.